Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. A distinguished young physicist in the 1970s, Yuri Yarim-Agaev, was a graduate student at the Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology, the Soviet Union's MIT, when he joined the dissident movement. In 1978, Yuri joined the Moscow-Helsinki Group, the dissident organization that monitored Soviet compliance, or non-compliance, with the human rights provisions of the Helsinki Accords. His fellow members of the organization included the physicist Yuri Orlov and Yelena Bonner, the wife of Andrei Sakharov. Pronounce it for me, Yuri.
Sakharov, yes.
The first name, though.
Andrei Sakharov.
Andrei Sakharov. In 1980, well, we'll come to what happened in 1980. Now a financial analyst in New York, Yuri devotes a great deal of his time to ensuring that the lessons of Soviet communism are not forgotten. Yuri, welcome.
Thank you.
Yuri, The Nature of Communism. Two quotations. Historian Robert Conquest. The Soviet assumption that all other political life forms and beliefs were inherently and immutably hostile was the simple and central cause of the Cold War. Quotation number two, historian Robert Harris. If only it had been Trotsky who had succeeded Lenin and not Stalin, then the USSR might have been spared its famines and its terrors, its show trials and its denials of freedom. Close quote. Was communism inherently hostile, or was communism somehow a grand plan that Stalin hijacked?
Oh, it's absolutely essential to realize that it's inherently hostile, and I'm 100% with Bob Conquest, not only because he is a good friend of mine, but mainly because I completely agree with him. It's, well, there is empirical proof for that. We can look at all communist countries, and they're all the same, in a sense. I mean, in all major features, you wouldn't find much distinction between Soviet communism, Chinese communism, North Korean communism. Whenever communism was established in this world, it repeated all terrible features of communism. Stalin was only in one country, but there were other Ho Chi Minhs, Castros, and Mao Zedong, all the same. It's absolutely predetermined model. Now, one thing we should understand about totalitarian society is that it doesn't give much room for any interpretation. It's pretty much preset. So communism was first defined pretty strictly by Marx, then modified by Lenin, and in that form actually is implemented from one country to another with hardly any variations.
So I want to ask about the Russianness of Soviet communism. Daniel Pipes, quote, "Nowhere in the West has Marxism led to the totalitarian excesses of Leninism, Stalinism. In Russia, Marxism fell on a soil devoid of traditions of self-rule, law, and private property." So Daniel Pipes makes the point, he argues, it runs through all his work, that there's something distinctively Russian about Soviet communism. That Stalin is unthinkable if he hadn't been communist, but also very hard to suppose if he hadn't been drawing on Russian traditions of autocracy and so forth. Does that make sense to you?
No, I disagree with Richard Pipes about that.
Richard, I'm sorry, I misspoke. That's Richard. His son is Daniel. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I disagree. What I can say that different countries may be susceptible to different extent to communism. So there is greater or lesser chance for communism to conquer this or that country. And say definitely United States or England with their traditions of democracy for many centuries has the strongest immunity to communism. Now, Russia didn't have such a strong immunity, as well as China and some other countries. But it would be illusion to think that if communism takes root in some of the society, it would have more benevolent form than it was in Russia. So it's a matter which country is more or less susceptible to this form of the government, but we shouldn't have any illusion that if that government, if that system is established in any society. It would be as terrible as it was in the Soviet Union.
Alexander Solzhenitsyn, speaking at Harvard in 1978, his famous commencement address at Harvard, quote, "Anguish about our divided world gave birth to the theory of convergence." That is to say, the Soviet Union and the West were growing more and more alike. "These worlds are not developing into similarity. If only you," this is Solzhenitsyn speaking to the faculty and faculty and students of Harvard, "if only you knew how the Moscow officials laugh at your political wizards," close quote. Solzhenitsyn was right?
Yes. He was 100% right, and this policy of convergence was pushed by Kremlin, and ironically, I would say it continues after the death of the Soviet communism. For some strange reasons, and that's one of the most strange facts to me, after democratic capitalism so decisively defeated Soviet communism.
Oh, we won?
Yes, in that specific part of the
I want to come to that,
war.
but there are all kinds of people who say it just ended. Nobody won.
No.
All right. Go ahead.
It hasn't ended, and it was a real war between ideological war, but very important warfare between two opposite systems of both political and economic system. And what is amazing, that after such a decisive victory of democracy and capitalism over communism, the lessons which were learned were very strange, and we, for some strange reason, still see some communist tendency developing inside our own country here.